talked about Gabe Vincent, Caleb. See, they don't give a fuck.
Yep.
They don't give a fuck, right? There's no real pressure associated with that. Like, I ain't supposed to be here anyway. I can speak to that. Like, that's how I play. Like, people ask how you go in a game, and I didn't give a fuck. I didn't care. Like, I ain't supposed to be here. So I can play with a freedom that, Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, let's use they might not have that freedom. Pressure's mounting on them. They've had these failures in the past. There's a level of care and of a legacy associated to what they're doing that I just don't have to deal with.
You play to a house money, because if we lose, we're not talking about, unless you do something ridiculously bad, right? But otherwise, no one say it's. Unless close lights won the series. We won the series. It doesn't matter.
Who did that? What the fuck? What did that?
Unless you lose your mind. Unless you lose your fucking mind.
Right. But in general, we go out there, we lose. No one's like, man, Raja, what the fuck, man? Like, they're not doing that. Like the stars, the victor goes to spoils. When we win, they get all the credit. Right? And maybe more credit than they should have gotten. And when we lose, they get all the blame and maybe more blame than they should have got. But that's the deal. That's why they get paid the big bucks, et cetera. The other thing is also, and I think people really forget about this part, because guys play roles in the NBA, there's often a belief of that's all they can do. Right? So when they look at Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin, there are people who thought literally that's all these guys can do is guard and hit a couple of open shots.
Right.
And meanwhile, these guys everyone's got a scrapbook, right? Everyone's got a resume. Everybody was something at somewhere at one point. Tony Parker tells a story of coming over to the Spurs and Bruce Bowen is on his team. And he's like, the Bruce Bowen? Because Bruce played in France. And when Bruce played in France, he was balling. And Tony was a kid. And he's like, oh my God, this dude. And he comes to San Antonio. He's like, this dude just stands in the corner and catches and shoots. And that's it. That's all he does on offense. Man, this guy was giving people buckets left and right. And the reality is, I'm not saying that Bruce Bowen had the talent to do that on an NBA level. But given the opportunity, guys will revert back to a life that they lived in the past. Ain't nobody was living a role player life their entire life, So right. I think that's some of the thing that catches people off guard sometimes.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Logan knows. You're 13th guy on an NBA roster that's asked to come in and give up 3 fouls and looks like he's shaky with the ball, and you think he's a bum. Given the opportunity to hop into a pickup game and no pressure and no expectations from a role, even in an NBA pickup game, will give you buckets. Right. You understand what I'm saying? Right. So the ability in a lot of cases are there. And I talk about my game was streamlined for playing in Phoenix. When I went to Phoenix, I was right on the cusp of what kind of NBA player will he be? Had never really been asked to do anything, was trying to find my sea legs offensively. Utah, because of this void of offensive weapons, allowed me to handle the ball, post up a little bit, play pick and roll. I wasn't really good in any of them, but I was able to score out of all positions on the floor because they were just empowering me to do that. And then in Phoenix, it's yo, we need you to fucking sprint to the corner.
Yeah.
And to play on a good team and to earn a nice check, that's what you do. That's my job now. And that's what you're saying. I'm doing a job. Hooping is in the purest form for fun. I do a little bit of everything. Yes, I can rock out with the ball in my hands if I need to. I did it my whole life, but now this is my job. So until you ask me to do something else, that's why I'm gonna hold you down.
Yeah. There's such a thin line between being in the league and even in a rotation role and then not being in the league. There's a lot of guys who are good players, but they haven't figured out. I always like to think of it as there's one question that's the most important thing for every player to be able to answer truthfully and accurately. Who am I? Because the guys who can't answer that question, they're lost. They might be talented, but they don't find a place. And the guys who know the answer to that question typically are the ones that last 10, 15 years, whatever.
I saw that my whole career. It's funny that you say that because there were so many dudes in camps definitely better than me. And you're talking about one-on-one skill level, size, speed, athleticism. But I used to use the term when I was I talked to my dad, who was my confidant with that shit. He'd be like, yo, what's going on? I'd be like, that he's better than me. I'm telling you, I'm not an idiot. I do this for a living. That he's better than me. But he might just be too good for his own good because he doesn't understand That's not what they're looking for, bro. That's not what they're going to be needing you to do, and he won't accept less.
Yeah.
You know, and so a lot of times, like, you know, you could fit in just accepting a little less and accepting that role.
Remember we had Juan Giscano Anderson on the pod, and he was talking about his first preseason with the Warriors, and he was passing the ball, he was setting screens and stuff, he was getting boards, and all his partners was telling him, "Hey, bro, why you ain't shooting the fucking ball?" Yeah, and he's like, "You idiot! I'm passing to Steph Curry and I'm setting the screen. That's how I'm going to make the team, right?" And I think, and we're talking about just how diluted that is, like that certain people have. They have that, like, because the only metric that everybody sees is scoring, especially from a role player, right? That's the only metric that people see as success. But with all that being said, though, who has the edge right now between these two teams from a bench standpoint? I'll start with you, Raja. Who you got? Who do you think? Who has the edge going into this series?
I mean, I think Denver has the edge. I think over the course of 82, see, I like you're going to have to score the ball with Denver. Now, the Heat put you in a tough spot. Like, I've heard people say, you know, that zone can't work against Denver. That zone only can't work if you're making shots. If you don't make shots, that zone works. And and that's going to remain to be seen. If Denver can step up and consistently make shots, you know, from the perimeter, they've done it through the course of the season. I think they tend to have the advantage, but I'm never going to bet. And I said this 2 pods ago, and I'm not betting against a team like Miami, full of dudes that I just told you don't give a fuck. You know, that aren't afraid to schematically flip it on you in the middle of a game and have someone who really understands what he's looking at so he can do that on the fly. And just generally is built from the ground up with solid people. So they're not looking, I didn't see any single person in the Miami series at any given time look shook in the Miami-Boston series. They didn't look shook. Now, they might not have played great. You know, the law averages catches up. You can't shoot, you know, 7 for 9 threes every fucking night. They're going to be off nights. But I can look in people's eyes, no, straight up. Like, I can watch a TV and say, "No, he don't want to play in that." And they don't have those type of dudes. So while I'm telling you, Denver, I think advantage in terms of overall production, and advantage in terms of best player on the floor, advantage in terms of, you know, accumulated rest because of the circumstances. I'm gonna sit here and tell you, on the other hand, if Miami gets a hold of them, like, Miami could be a problem.